All right, Shalom. First and foremost, we're going to begin this video by giving praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Racha, Kodash. Excuse me, double honor to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone. And Shalom to the Lord's elect, beginning with the 144,000. This is a Ratazah from the Great Millstone GMS Atlanta camp with another quick video. All right, and this one to hit on this one particular article that I came across the other day from a website called the Jerusalem Post, and the headline just jumped out at me. And as we always state, we look at certain things, they pop up on our feed, or they'll come across our desk, and we read certain things, and we just can't help to start start thinking about the scriptures, thinking about prophecies, thinking about current events, and how, as the scripture says, to measure the time, right? In 2nd Ezra, the 9th chapter. So as soon as I seen this headline, I immediately thought of, how the scripture speak about the Medo-Persian Empire, how they, was how they was it was a joint rulership, all right, the Medes of old, in the Persians, which today would be modern day Iran, and how it was the Medo-Persian Empire that took down Babylon, right? Which we know that today America is the new Babylon, all right? And the reason why I made that correlation, because the Iranians and the Persians, the Iranians and the Russians are the new Medo-Persian pact, so to speak. All right, that partnership. Now, the Russians are obviously Edomites, and they're not Japheth, right? Because the Medes of old, that was Japheth. But today, the Russians playing that stead, man. Russia is basically funding Iran, and they're supplying them with a lot of weapons and resources, things of that nature. And that's prophecy, right? That goes into Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, which speaks about Gog and Magog being a guard to Persia and Ethiopia and all that, the different places that it names. But this article just shows that relationship is strong. All right, Russia is basically giving a lot of credit to Iran. And all right, it's going to be the Russians, all right, along with Iran, as I stated earlier in Ezekiel 38, that's going to bring down America, all right. It's going to bring down Babylon the Great in the coming third World War, all right. And this article just shows that relationship is getting stronger, all right. As you see the title here, it says Russia to fund construction of new nuclear plant in Iran. It's on top of funding the construction of a new nuclear plant in Iran, Russia will supply Iran with 55 billion cubic meters per year. All right, so that's a lot of resources that they're going to supply to Iran. Now, one part of this article that stood out. All right, I'm not going to read the whole thing, obviously, for time's sake. But when you jump down to where was it at? All right, yeah. So yeah, this part right here. It says the deepening Russia-Iran gas trade. It says Tehran and Moscow also agreed on a deal to supply Iran with 55 billion cubic meters of Russian gas per year. Price is yet to be confirmed. Additionally, Najad, I'm saying that right, said on Friday that Iran will sign a $4 billion agreement with Russian company to develop 7 oil fields. It said the two countries are angling to sign agreements that increase the flow of Russian gas and bolster Iran's position as a regional gas hub. And here's the point: Russian President Vladimir Putin and Iranian counterpart Masoud Pezeshkian, if I'm saying that right, signed a 20-year strategic partnership treaty in January involving closer defense cooperation, in upscaling economic ties and trade between their two countries to be carried out in their own currencies. So this is just to show that that relationship is bonding even tighter. All right, because that's the prophecy, right? Russia, which would be Gog and Magog, or the Medes in this time, and Iran or the Persians would come together in the latter days, and you're seeing it with these different deals that they're signing. All right, so I just thought that was interesting, man. All right, on how we're literally seeing Ezekiel 38 and these different prophecies play out. All right, now we've done videos on how to prophetically link the modern day Russians to the Medes, and we've really just proved it. All right, how Iran or the Persians, all right, their co-partner in all of this is the Russians, all right, which is basically their strongest ally. All right, back then in times of old, the Persians, their strongest ally was the Medes. All right, now in this time, their strongest ally is the Russians. So in the spirit, that's how we can biblically link the Russians to the Medes. And also, it's no coincidence that, all right, the Russians, their national symbol or their country's animal is the bear. All right, in which the bear was used to describe the Medo-Persian Empire when we read Daniel's the 7th chapter. All right, which I had that up right here. Matter of fact, let me go to that since I just said it. All right, this is Daniel chapter 7 and verse. I'm gonna jump down to the point, verse 5. All right, when we read this verses here is going into the breakdown of the four beasts, which essentially is four kingdoms. All right, you got Babylon, and then the Medo-Persian Empire, as we're about to read. And you got the Greeks, and you got the Romans. All right, so this is verse 5, and it says, Daniel 7:5, it says, and behold, another beast, a second like to a bear. See that? And the Russians use the bear as their symbol. It says, and it raised up itself on one side. Why? Because the Persians at that time, they were strong, because it was I guess what historians or scholars call a diarchy. All right, a diarchy, which is a joint rulership. You have two nations that rule at the same time. So the Persians at that time, they were stronger. So that's why the bear in this vision that Daniel saw, or this dream that the king had, the bear was raised on one side. It represents the Persians being stronger. And it says, and it had 3 ribs in his mouth of it between the teeth of it, which represents the Medo-Persian Empire taking down, number 1, Babylon. I believe the other 2 is Lydia in Egypt. All right. So the teeth represents war, the military force. And it says, and they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. All right. So that was the Medo-Persian Empire. So today, the bears, that bear has been brought back in the spirit, and it's still raised on one side, but now the Medes or the Russians are the stronger of the two. As we just read in the article, how the Russians are supplying the Persians or Iranians with all these resources and signing all these deals. All right. Also on that, as far as the bear is concerned, all right, Revelation 13 verse 1, and it said the point is verse 2, but I start at the top. It says, I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Now when you go into the beast that is describing what John saw in this vision, essentially this beast represents the Edomite power structure. All right. Excuse me. The Edomite power structure, essentially going back to the genesis of it with the Greeks. All right, which was basically the first Edomite rulership. And then basically what you're going to find out is the end of Esau's reign on the earth, which is going to come by the way of the Russians. All right. But we'll get into it in verse 2. All right. It says, verse 13:2, it says, the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, right? Which is a reference back to the Greeks. Also, going back to Daniel 7, when you read about the four beasts, the third beast, it mentions a leopard, which represent the Greek Empire. All right. And it says, and his feet, here's the point, whereas the feet of a bear. All right. Which the bear is, again, is a reference back to the Medo-Persian Empire. But in this day and time, all right, the bear represents the Russians, because the end of Esau's system is going to come by the way of the Russians. The feet represent the end, or the last. All right. All right. When you deal with time, you deal with a certain level of chronological order. The head represents the first, and then it works its way down through time. And then when it gets to the feet, that's like the end of it. So the end of this beast, the end of the beast system, all right, the end of Esau is going to come by the way of these Russians. So that's also how you can link the bear to the Russians and the Medes and so forth. Then it goes on and says it had his mouth as the mouth of a lion, right, which is Great Britain. And the dragon, which is the Roman Empire, gave him his power and his seat and great authority. See that? So all of these animals, they're in reference, of course, to Daniel the 7th chapter. They all represent a particular point in history, and you can link them back to certain nations. But the point when the hit was the feet of this beast that John saw is symbolically talking about the Russians, because the Russians is who is going to lead the charge in bringing this man down, right? Esau. All right, let's get a couple more here that I got pulled up. I can get more scriptures on it, but just wanted to hit the main points. All right, and you see right there, right? This is Isaiah 13th chapter, beginning at the 17th verse. In the little subtitle they have here, Babylon will fall to the Medes, right? That's right. All right, we know that, and when you read this, the entirety of this chapter, this is not talking about the Babylon of old. All right, when you read into it, because it speaks about how this Babylon is going to be utterly destroyed, is not going to be inhabited no more. All right. Now we know that that ancient Babylon today, you could still go there. I believe that's modern day Iraq. All right, that's still a functioning, area, so to speak. So this can't be talking about the Babylon of old. This is talking about America. And the Medes that's going to fall to is, again, the Russians, all right, Vladimir Putin. And then you also got the Persians, join with that. Okay, so show you how the Most High deals in a way where now the Medes and the Persians, quote unquote, are going to take down Babylon, quote unquote, all over again. All right, so this is Isaiah 13:17. It says, behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, meaning that the Most High is going to stir up these Russians against Babylon the Great, which is America. It says, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. It says, their bows also shall dash the young men to pieces, the bows of the nuclear missiles, and they shall have no pity, on the fruit of the womb. Their eye shall not spare children. See that? So when the Spirit get on these Russians to go to war, all right, and Vladimir Putin, if decides to push that goddamn button, they don't care about nothing. All they're gonna care about is destroying America. That's the biblical prophecies. All right. As I mentioned, when you read on, it details how basically Babylon the Great is not going to be inhabited no more, but it's going to be the dwelling place of desert-like creatures. snakes, lizards, certain buzzards and vultures and unclean birds, as it says in Revelation, the 18th chapter. All right, basically reiterates the same thing. So this is what's getting ready to happen, man. And we're seeing how everything is lining up and how these nations are teaming up and they're in cahoots with one another because it's all falling in line with the prophecies, man. All right. But I'm not going to read the whole thing. I just want to hit that main point. Let's go to Daniel 5 now. All right. And this basically applies too. All right. Now, we all know about the story about the handwriting on the wall. All right. When it was told to, Belshazzar, that his kingdom was about to fall. All right. And the same thing is being told to the king or the kings of Babylon now, which the kings of Babylon will be Esau. All right, start with the super rich elite and trickling on down. We're telling them, all right, basically the writing on the wall. All right, which essentially the writing on the wall is this truth, the scriptures. We're telling them that the kingdom's divided, is going down. All right, you've been found wanting and weighed in the balances. All right, and that the nation of Israel is going to rule next. But let's get it real quick. This is Daniel 5, and let's start at 24. It says, "Then was the part of the hand sent from him, and this writing was written. And this is the writing that was written. Many, tekel upharsin. This is the interpretation of a thing. Many, the Most High or the Heavenly Father have numbered thy kingdom and finished it." See that? Yeah, that's what basically happening with America. Okay, the New Age Babylon. The Most High has numbered this place, and he's getting ready to finish it off, man. All right. Verse 27. Tekel or tekel, thou art weighed in the balances, and art found wanting. All right, wanting means lacking. All right, now here's the point. Verse 28. Perez, thy kingdom is divided, and given to the Medes and Persians. See that? So just like of old, Babylon was brought down by the hand of the Medes and the Persians. All right, which I said, which back then was Japheth and really Japheth and Elam, right? Because Iran or the Persians, that's Elam, and then the Medes are old with Japheth. So Babylon the Great got brought down by them in the past, but in this day and age, the Iranians are back. The Persians are back. All right, the modern day Iranians. But who's Iran's superpower backing? It's the Russians. So the Russians would have to be the Medes when you update the prophecy, so to speak. Right? So that's how you can make that correlation. So yeah, so once again, Babylon the Great is going to fall to the Medo-Persians. See? And again, just to bring it on home, we're seeing in the spirit, all right, that that bonding or that relationship being well, not just formed, but is being made stronger, man. It's all for the sake of prophecy. All right. And yeah, so that was that was the main point. Hit this couple of verses there. Like I said, this article caught my attention, and it's beautiful, man, to see the spirit of Yahweh Shem Hashai working, and we're seeing all the pieces being set up, man. Okay, so yeah, with that, I'm gonna leave it off there. All right, Lord willing, you was edified and informed by this video, giving praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh B'Hashem Yahweh Shai B'Hashem Rachak Wadash, and Lord willing, to the next video, I'm gonna say Shalom.